righty, welcome everybody to our 42nd episode of Brownsville Tech Live. And tonight we've got a special guest. I consider him a friend, and his name is Mr. Carlos Cascos. He is currently running for Cameron County Judge this November. Mr. Cascos, welcome back.
Daniel, thank you for having me. I appreciate you taking the time and asking me to come on your show.
Not a problem, sir. I remember interviewing you back on my previous show back in February, and since then, like I said, we've have this tech show that we have gone on for about a year, 42nd episodes in total. We are the only podcast in the Valley that's a tech show number one, but we have a presence across the 6 major social media platforms. For any of you out there, you can catch this broadcast live on Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify. And for those of you that are driving into work tomorrow or wherever you need to go, you can catch us on Google Podcasts as well as Apple Podcasts. And for those gamers out there, you can also catch this show on Twitch. So once again, Mr. Cascos, welcome to the show. How's it going? I mean, I know you've got less than 30 days, maybe a little bit more than 30 days before the election. How are things going?
You know, I get asked that frequently. How's your campaign going? How's it going? And my response has been the same. I will let you know November the 8th at about 10 p.m.
Well, that's a good way of looking at it, you know. I know there's been a lot of activity going on, a few October surprises, you know, and, what's the state of affairs, politics-wise here, locally? I mean, we've had some quite interesting news, I guess, over the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Well, more specifically, you're probably in the last 7 to 8 days regarding Tenasca. I decided to run at the last minute. My plan really was not to run. I waited till 4:59, the last day to file, hoping somebody would come in that I believed would be able to put up a good fight. Somebody that was viable, credible, and had the experience to run for county judge as a Republican. And nobody came in. And so when nobody came in, I said, well, I don't want Eddie to run alone in the Democrat primary, which he did, and then run alone again in November without trying to give it a good fight. And so, I've never believed in people running simply for the sake of running. I don't need to have my name out there. I don't need to have my name on a ballot. I've been doing this since 1990. I've been a county commissioner, a county judge, a DPS commissioner, and of course, Secretary of State under Abbott. And so I've got a good chunk of time, in the political arena, not only the local level, but the state level. I decided to run, and in the interim, from the time that I filed to today, there's been a lot of activity. The latest one being the PUB / Tenasca fiasco. I think that is something that impacts everybody that has a utility meter sponsored by PUB in Brownsville. I got a call today, as a matter of fact, from a lady that has got a very humble home on the east side of town, probably less than 800 to 900 square feet. And she was concerned because her utility bill was about $1,000 that she just got, and nothing has changed. And it's been hovering around, $200 or $300, and now she gets a big bill for a little under $1,000. So I'm sure she's not the only one that's going through this. But
Right.
prior to that, of course, we had the arena that came on that I was not a proponent of, and simply not that I'm against economic development and having fun and concerts, but the numbers that I saw on the county's financials and their budget could not sustain an arena of $100 million project, 10,000 seat facility. I mean, I was open to, Daniel, no one ever disputed my numbers.
Mm-hmm.
They had plenty of opportunity to say, yo, what, Carlos, you're wrong. This is why. No one ever did. And so I just kind of started pushing it on Facebook, and it lost the first time by a handful of votes. They brought it back again. I was a little bit more active with posting budgets and trying to explain it to folks in layman's terms. I mean, I'm a CPA. I mean, that's what I do. It was very, very easy for me to decipher the numbers, but I wanted to put it in layman's terms, and I think we did that.
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest with you, sir. I was kind of, on the fence when it came to the arena. There were sometimes I was thinking, well, maybe we should have one. Maybe we should not. But one of the things that I think, something that I learned is with respects to convention type of arenas, call them centers, event centers, whatever you will call them.
You can call them money pits if
well,
you
that's
want.
exactly that's exactly what I was going to lead to, is that a lot of these types of venues don't make money. In fact, the Harlingen Convention Center is still in the red. I think the McAllen Convention Center is barely breaking even.
Right.
I just haven't seen any venue that actually makes money. Now, I will say this. Out of all the venues that we here in the Valley have, and I know that McAllen has a nice one, no doubt about that. But the reality of it is when people think of going to a convention, let's be honest, they're not thinking of the Valley to come down to a convention. It's hard to compete against those big cities. I mean, I remember a few years back, sir, when we had to go up to San Antonio, and I kid you not, it was like the U.S. Postal Convention. I didn't even know mailmen had a convention. But they were in droves in San Antonio. They're at that convention center across the Riverwalk.
So the Henry B. Gonzalez Convention Center, I believe is the name.
Yeah. So to me, it's difficult to compete against the big cities. That's not to say that we can't ever have a convention of this sort. But I think looking at all the venues that we've got, the one that I like, and personally that I've attended for tech conferences, education tech conferences primarily, is the South Padre Island Convention Center. It's perfect. Right. It's got adequate space for an exhibit hall. And then, I kid you not, they've had about 9 or 10 extra rooms where they held different sessions. And it worked out pretty well. I mean, the other convention centers, they literally have to be broken. They've been designed more modularly. They can be divided, but this one just seems to work well. And so,
I think we need to focus on the proposed arena, and the proposed arena was 1/3 of it, about 33 million, was going to be paid through these occupancy taxes, hotel, rental cars, etc. Yeah. Well, currently, and these are not my numbers; these are the county's numbers. Yeah. Currently, what the county collects right now is a little under 1.8 million in this hotel, motel taxes and car rental fees. About 1.8 million. Mm-hmm. Well, that money's already committed. That alone is already committed to the amphitheater and then to the Laguna Vista Eco Center. There's also debt of 1.2 million on that existing what we have now. Okay. Mm-hmm. So in order to amortize, which means write off this 33 million over 20 years, it was going to be right at about 1.6 million, 1.7 million, mm-hmm. principal only, without interest and without any maintenance and operation costs, without anything, without utilities, you would make, whatever it is. And that means that we would have to double, assuming in a perfect world, we would have to double the amount of hotel, motel, and rental fees. Mm. We don't have, look, there's a couple of things. And I love my community. I've been here pretty much all of my adult life, ever since I was a 4-year-old. I wanted to succeed. but it also has to succeed within the financial parameters that we can afford. We are not Hidalgo County that has 1.1 million people. We've got half that. Hidalgo County is a much wealthier county than we are. They have oil and gas, revenue that comes into the political subdivisions. We do not. So, and I think the deal was, I saw I guess the projections. They were pie in the sky. That we don't have the demographics of people to be able to fill that arena once a month of 8,000 to 9,000 people. And then even if people, well, I think one of the arguments was, well, they're going to be coming down from Hidalgo County and et cetera. Well, if they're going to come from Hidalgo County, they're not going to spend the night and they're not going to rent a car. Mm-hmm. They're going to drive in, go to the concert, and drive out. That was issue number one. Number two, where are you going to park 8,000 cars on that arena? I mean, if you fill it to capacity, we've got one highway coming in, one highway going out. I think it would have been a traffic disaster. Now, you brought up the convention center. I believe that if we're going to do something, we do it in conjunction with the South Padre Island Convention Center. I haven't looked at the land availability, but I'm pretty sure there is land available. Mm-hmm. Someone's going to bring up the argument. You know what? How are you going to get these cars across? We can barely do it during spring break, and there's lines. Absolutely. But no matter where this arena would have been built, you're going to have traffic congestion at any time, just because of the nature of where we're at. But maybe that would have given the TxDOT, the Texas Department of Transportation, and the federal transportation the incentive to build the second causeway. Mm-hmm. And if they build the convention center out north, I think number one, it's going to expand the property tax base for Cameron County, increase property taxes, and in given 5, 6, 7 years, build this causeway that's been in discussions for 2 decades. But I just didn't believe that the arena was fiscally viable. They were having ads about Elton John and Selena, and I mean not Selena, the other Selena Gomez, and all these folks coming down to this. That was pie in the sky. Yeah. And you're right. I mean, people are not going to come to Brownsville just to come to Brownsville. People come to the valley to go where? South Padre Island.
Right.
That's where they go. I mean, it's the number one destination. So why not do something like that? They've had some concerts at the amphitheater in Isla Blanca Park. It hasn't gone very well. Okay. Yeah. For whatever reason,
Well, sir, it's a good thing you mentioned that, because I'll be honest with you, I went down to the island about a week ago, and maybe a couple of weeks, actually twice, and I guess I hadn't been there in a while, but I was astonished at the park fee that is charged now to enter Isla Blanca. It's $12. I mean, I never remember it being that high when I was younger, when I spent my time on the beach. But that's a little excessive, I think,
Well, and I think, it used to be $8. It used to be right. $10. Yeah, I mean, some of, we're kind of, and I hate to say it, but I think it all goes to management. I think that the county financially has not been managed well. And I didn't create these problems. I mean, they started off with supposedly a $5 million deficit budget when they started their budget talks. All of a sudden, there's no budget deficit because they moved monies around. Anybody that knows anything about finances is, you don't cure a deficit by moving monies around. That mm-hmm. tells me that there was never a deficit, or they transferred money from let's say the bridge fund or the park fund. I don't know which one. I haven't seen those financials. Mm-hmm. I think it came from the bridge system to fund it, which is fine. They maintained the same tax rate, but everybody's getting their tax. I got my tax bills today, and I was afraid to open the envelope. And because, because even though some entities kept the same tax rate, that's really a moot point if their appraisals went up 10, 15%. So your taxes went up 10 or 15%. Yeah. The county did nothing to mitigate the increase in taxes. they did defund, and that's the word that I'm going to use, because they did defund the sheriff's office by
Yeah.
55 slots,
Yeah.
and that was wrong.
Yeah. And
You
we'll
know,
talk about that in a little while, because definitely I know the word is pretty popular right now. There is another word that's pretty popular too, but we'll get to that part in a little bit. But one of the things that, as you know, my audience is a little different from some of the other podcasts you've been on. Oh, and by the way, I'm getting a little jealous because you've been spending too much time with my cousin at Osmo. You,
he's a, I think he invites me, and I accept maybe 1 out of 5 times that he invites me, and I came on twice last week and then this week specifically to talk about the PUB
oh yeah.
fiasco. Okay,
I
and
I
mainly
think he
because
doesn't sleep over that.
yeah, I mean, I'm a numbers guy,
Yeah.
and I don't know if you've had the opportunity to read the audit report. I've read it twice,
I read it.
and
I
it's very,
sped read through it.
yeah, it's very disturbing.
Yeah.
It's very
Yeah.
disturbing. So,
Well, one of the things, yeah, well, the only thing I was going to tell you, if you keep on going on his podcast, you're going to end up adopting his attire.
I hope not. I always wear white. I think,
Okay, okay,
I
okay.
think it makes me look thinner, but I don't know.
But anyways, sir, let's talk. Once again, as I was going to mention to you, my audience is a little different from his and all the other podcasters. We're more of a tech show. We're very interested in space related news and stuff like that. So my audience is a little different from that aspects. And by the way, for the trolls out there, Elon is not supporting this podcast financially, okay? Just so that we get the record straight before. But sir, one of the things that I know that a lot of my viewers has asked is basically is with regards to SpaceX. And I guess I'll go ahead and throw out the question is Mr. Cascos for SpaceX or is he against SpaceX? I mean, that's a fair question.
Well, and I always answer questions. I don't hide and send you written statements.
Yeah.
The I support SpaceX, okay, but let me preface: I'm the one that signed the contract in 2014 with SpaceX. I'm the one that negotiated that contract, of course, with advice from legal counsel, of course. But I'm the one that essentially negotiated that contract with SpaceX, and we had a lot of give and take, everything from beach closures to security to abatements, etc. So after it was all said and done, I signed the contract. It passed on a 4-1 vote. Commissioner Sanchez voted against it, and other than that, it passed 4-1. And then it all began. The contract, as it was written, and I'm not privy to any new information, but I think if it was out there, it would be brought up by now. The agreement that we had was that they were allowed to close Boca Chica Beach 1 day a month with 3 alternate dates.
Uh-huh.
And they could not close on any holidays. No July 4th, no Labor Day, no Easter, no spring break. That was the agreement. They could not close during those holiday times. Well, as we know, they're not, in my opinion, abiding by the contract. And so my position is, everybody that's listening, if you have a mortgage on your home, if you're buying your car, through financing, or even if you're leasing it, or if you're leasing a copy machine at your office, you have a contract.
Right.
And we have to adhere to that contract. And when you don't adhere to it, there's consequences. So yes, I support SpaceX, but I do not support the fact that it appears that they're not adhering to the terms of the contract.
Okay, let's go ahead and flip to a different screen, which is a different screen. It's our actual virtual theater, but we have no theater or popcorn today. But basically, one of the things that I wanted to talk about was, you're right, there was a contract signed. Sorry, wrong one. There was a contract signed in 2018, and I don't have any historical information, but I did follow it, since the beginning, with regards to the activity. Actually, I probably knew more about Elon Musk than most people in the area because, as you know, he founded PayPal and Zip2. And I'm, of course, in the tech world. I live and breathe there. So
Did you say, Daniel, did you say 2018 or 2014?
2014, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
That's the
2014.
only contract that I know of that's out there that's been signed by
Correct.
Cameron County and SpaceX. Okay.
Yes.
2014.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I believe that the original contract um, involved the possibility of setting up a commercial spaceport, and it exclusively dealt with Falcon 9 and Falcon 9 heavy launch vehicles. That was the original proposal. And obviously, fast forward about 4 years later in 2018, SpaceX announced that instead of launching Falcon 9 rockets and the Falcon 9 Heavy, um, they were going to convert this facility into an R&D facility. That's what transpired. Now, there's a couple of reasons why they initially were looking to this area. You know, they were having a hard time in Florida back in those days to keep an active launch schedule. It was hard to compete against NASA, Boeing. If they wanted to do 100 launches a year, they couldn't do them because they had to wait their turn. So they were looking for an alternative, and lo and behold, they end up here. So that was the conditions then. Those were the business conditions then. They only had contracts for the space station and not about anything else. But since then, as you well know, the business conditions have changed quite a bit. You know, SpaceX is the only company that can send astronauts and cargo to the space station currently. Day after day, they keep on wrestling contracts away from everybody else. You know, they get a NASA contract for 5 more missions worth $1 billion. You've got SpaceX getting the big contract for the moon lander. You know, you've got SpaceX getting more money here by the Air Force. And then you've got T-Mobile now, you know, where they're going to do Starlink launches. So what all this means is that Florida, and they're trying to get this business. They're interested in ensuring that not a single rocket ever launches from here because they want it. They want that business. So the question is, obviously the business conditions have changed since 2014. And I've heard you talk about amending the contract because I think I've heard you say that a few times.
Right.
What does amending the contract mean, knowing now, and I don't want to go John Kerry on you, knowing now what you know now that you didn't know then,
Right.
what does amending the contract mean? Because there's gonna have to be give and take based on
That's
all
right.
this
Yeah.
activity. Yeah.
Well, yeah. You know, again, they when they made these alterations, they did it unilaterally.
Yeah.
The county had a contract with SpaceX. You know, we entered into a contract with what we knew in 2014.
Yeah.
As things evolved and developed and things changed, you know, there was nothing to prevent SpaceX from coming to the county and said, look, conditions have changed. We need to change this contract or amend the contract.
Oh,
Then I would say,
sorry, sir.
fine.
I was meaning to look, dot
Okay.
all the articles there of all the contracts
Yeah,
they've
there you
got.
go. You know,
Sorry
and I
about
don't,
that.
but the county wasn't even, to my knowledge, the county wasn't even given the opportunity to negotiate any of the terms and conditions. Maybe instead of 1 day, they needed 2 days.
Right.
The county was never given that opportunity. So right now, as it stands, based on what I know, they are, and I'm sure it warrants it. I'm sure it's all legitimate. I'm sure everything's fine, but you cannot unilaterally change the terms of a contract that you have between two parties. You
Right.
know, there's got to be an agreement. You know, and I would have listened. I would have brought them in. I would have had public comment. I would have had, you know, and probably that wasn't going to go very well. You know, but still, giving the public and the county the opportunity to delve into it once again and make whatever changes we needed to make.
Right.
We were not, we were not given that opportunity to do that, or the county was not given that opportunity. And so it gives the appearance that Mr. Musk is in control and controlling Cameron County officials, city officials, everybody else. That may or may not be true, but it gives the appearance that he can do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
There was never discussion about abandonment of streets and street closures and all this stuff. And I'm not saying that it was wrong. What I'm saying is that the county leadership should have taken it upon themselves when they saw this happening, bring them to the table and say, okay, we need to negotiate whether it's additional incentives, whether investments in more in our city, in our county, in our schools, something. Okay. Yeah. The other issue, I believe that at some point, if we don't get a handle on this, they're going to ask to abandon part of State Highway 4. That's what I think they're going to try to do. They're already closing it without the authority. Their own security guards are closing it without proper notice, which is wrong. Part of the agreement was you have to give adequate notice to the general public, and at a minimum, Cameron County, right? So I think they're going to do that. So I have not had these discussions with TxDOT, but if nothing changes, I would encourage TxDOT not to abandon it without SpaceX building a loop, another entrance into Boca Chica Beach.
And let's talk about that a little bit. In fact, let me clear out this picture here for a second. And it's a good thing you touched on State Highway 4 a little bit, because we've got a video here. I think, let me transition the video. Sorry about that. And this is actually the dynamics of what the problem is. And I'll go ahead and play it for a second here. The issue is where they actually assemble the rockets and where that's where they assemble them, right there. Well, that's okay. Like maybe miles away from the actual launch tower. So because they can't move those rockets over that marshland, they have to use Highway 4, as you mentioned, right. And obviously right. Closures. But it's a long right. distance. It's a long distance from point A to point B. So one of the things I did want to ask you about, and which you did touch on, is the solution to that. Obviously, long-term, and we hope to have them long-term, is, we've got to find a way to build around it. Would it make sense for them to build an alternative to State Highway 4 for beachgoers and retain that original stretch? When you mention they have them build something, is that
the only way that I will support the closures and the abandonment of State Highway 4 will be if they do build an alternate route to Boca Chica Beach. And it can be done, of course, there's going to be a lot of, environmental studies, right-of-way acquisitions, right. etc. It's going to take some time to do that, but we should have a plan in place. My issue is the unilateral acting. It's like if the state all of a sudden went in and then put a toll booth, on State Highway 4 unilaterally, specifically for the folks that work at SpaceX, without any input. Bottom line is, I think they can do it either overground or underground. I think they want. There's been some discussion of Mr. Musk wanting to build a subterranean tunnel, from South Padre Island over to Boca Chica Beach. That may work. I don't know. I mean, it takes, smarter people than me to figure that out. But I don't have a problem with abandoning Highway 4, let's say from the Border Patrol checkpoint, on, but they have to give everybody, there's no way the state's going to abandon it without giving the public another entrance into Boca Chica Beach. Let's start with that.
Yeah.
And if I have to, and a lot of these tech dot commissioners are personal friends that I know, and I they just sit down and talk to them and say, hey, where are fishing, where are they going to go fish? Where are people going to go to camp out, etc.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know, it could be a $200 million project, $300 million project, to circumvent this, but it's papita,
Yeah.
it's papita to Mr.
Well,
Musk, you
well, for
know,
him it
no,
is.
yeah, for him it is exactly. I mean, people need to
Yeah.
realize what a billion dollars is 1,000 million.
Yeah.
That's what $1 billion is. He's got 250 of those. Okay,
Yeah.
so think of it that way. He's got so he could easily build this road with $1 billion. It wouldn't take that much, I don't think. Let's say
Yeah.
$1 billion. You're still going to have 249 billion left.
Yeah.
So I don't think the money would be an issue for SpaceX, but I think getting over the environmental impact, and the impact it's going to have on our fragile, endangered species and everything else. So maybe what would make sense would either build an overpass. I'm just throwing things out there so people don't get locked into just, well, we're going to build a 100-foot wide highway. Well, let's think about it. Could we go underground? Could we do a tunnel, or would we be able to build an overpass?
Right.
I don't know if we have the room. I mean, and I'm just throwing things out there, but at least we need to talk about it.
Yeah.
I just didn't like the idea of SpaceX unilaterally doing things without, and the county let them get away with it.
Yeah. Well,
Unfortunately.
like I told you, I was asked, when I mentioned that I was going to have you on, a lot of my friends, and I have plenty of friends who work at SpaceX. I mean, there's got plenty of friends over there, and, they wanted to know, because I've seen a lot of the comments on all the other podcasts, some of them say, no, Mr. Cascos is going to kick Elon's butt, and things like that, and there's concern out there, there's concern that,
look, it's like anything else. I think that step number one is that compliance with the contract. Let's forget about from point A to point B in Highway 4. Comply with the contract that we have right now. If that's not working for us, if that's not working for SpaceX, then we need to go back and amend the contract. I'm not saying reinvent the wheel,
right,
but we may have to make some amendments in order to accommodate this new version of SpaceX.
Yeah.
But I just don't think it's right that we give everything, and the county gets, or the community gets, nothing in return.
Right.
And to me, it's giving access, to Boca Chica Beach. Yeah. That's the main thing.
Because, obviously with the graphic that I showed you earlier, there's a lot of contracts out there. And with all that activity, it doesn't matter how much Florida gives. They're not going to have enough capacity to fulfill that. So either the facility here eventually is going to have to do some commercial launches, or let's say we don't do any commercial launches. Just rocket manufacturing in itself, knowing that the rocket engines are built here in McGregor. Just
right.
A logistics standpoint, it's cheaper to manufacture here in this area. You've got a workforce that knows how to build them now. It would make
right.
sense.
No, I think the economic impact, and I don't have the numbers, but I can only imagine what the economic impact has been by bringing SpaceX. I think bringing SpaceX here, the way we originally talked about, was the right thing to do based on the information that we have. My only concern is the unilateral activity where no one appears to have any input, and this should have been done 3 years ago. You sit down with them and said, "Look what we're going to do," and we wouldn't be having. There's a lot of people that love SpaceX, and there's a lot of people that do not love SpaceX. And we know that. And I just want people to follow the terms and conditions that we entered into, and if they need to be changed, then we need to sit down together. I dealt with Elon Musk's lawyers doing this. Good people. Now, I try to get a hold of a couple of them, and they're no longer with SpaceX to talk about some stuff. But I think it's important that we don't do anything to look. Can Elon Musk pack up his bags and leave? Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Okay. If he has $1 billion invested in there, He's got 249 more to go, right? So it's not about running them off and keep, we want to be good partners.
Right.
But if the county started doing stuff that didn't comply with the contract, I guarantee you, we'd have people knocking at the courthouse doors at 7 o'clock in the morning, trying to find out why. So in a nutshell, I support SpaceX, but I just think that we just sit down and negotiate, where do we go from here, and go a little bit further, because keep in mind that their abatement is up in about 2025, 2026.
Yeah.
So there's, it was a 10-year abatement. And we may need to talk about that as well. If they've got additional stuff out there, they may want, more abatements. I don't know. But it's got to be a fair exchange. And I think it's not fair right now.
Well, definitely, sir. I'm glad that you clarified that. I know that some of our viewers believe that there's a vast left-wing conspiracy out there funneled by the Sierra Club to get rid of SpaceX at every angle they can. So I'm glad. Now, sadly, there are some Republicans out there on the ticket that don't seem to be for SpaceX. And it's sad because that's not very Republican of them to be against private enterprise. But that's
I haven't heard of any locals. I mean, they don't bring it to me. I will tell you that Governor Perry was instrumental in attracting SpaceX. I can tell you Governor Abbott, Dan Patrick, these guys, they have not said anything to me about my thoughts.
No,
so
definitely.
It could be people that are outside. I don't know. I haven't heard that.
I mean, it's just, we're just glad that you're not part of that left-wing vast conspiracy. No. I'm almost sounding like Hillary now.
I tell you what, for anybody listening, I'm neither an extreme leftist or extreme rightist. And so I get in trouble, with members of my party that I'm not Republican enough. And I said, I'm sorry, but it's not about being Republican enough. It's about doing the right thing.
Yeah. Well, one of the areas I wanted to talk to you about, and, you mentioned the word defunding, and obviously that word's been used over and over again, not only from the right, but the left quite a bit. But I really didn't want to talk about defunding per se, even though I know you mentioned it. I want to talk about what I believe I have not seen in my lifetime, and probably yours, is the broken level of communication between the sheriff's department and the administrative side of the county. I can't recall ever seeing both sides literally take themselves to court over things that they could have settled over a beer and some time. Right. And I know that the sheriff is kind of young, maybe a little bit of a whippersnapper at times, but I just can't recall Sheriff Lucio. I don't remember who the other guy was before. Oh yeah,
I do. The other one did. The other one did time.
Yeah.
Let's start off.
Yeah. Let's go ahead. Go ahead.
Let's just cut to the chase. I agree with you. The way it was handled by both sides. When you're in a leadership position, you got to maintain your cool. You can't yell out at constituents. You can't. You really, no matter what you're being told. I believe now the sheriff did have the constitutional right to take over the courthouse security. Let's get that out of the way. He did have that.
So he did have that authority.
Yes, the constitutional right to do that. Now, prior to him going in, the agreement was between Sheriff Lucio and Abel Gomez, the constable, was that the sheriff would acquiesce and let Abel, take over courthouse security. Mm-hmm. Now, I was judged when all this happened, and as a matter of fact, I ran into somebody that had a video of the meeting where I said to the constable, if a new sheriff ever comes in, we're gonna have to renegotiate this, or you're gonna have to renegotiate this, but he doesn't want to do it it goes back to the sheriff's office. Okay.
Right.
So Eric did have the constitutional right to do it. Now, the downside, when somebody gets elected, they come in with 3 months out of 12 into the new budget year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so when Eric came in, he comes in January 1st. The budget starts October. So you have October, November, December. You've got 3 months already. I think he could have handled it better. I think he could have done it one of two ways, and not, taken, he's probably going to get upset with me, but it is what it is. He could have handled it better and maybe a little bit more diplomatically,
Mm-hmm.
instead of saying, "Hey, effective January 5th, you guys are gone. You answer to me," etc. That was really, he had, again, the constitutional right to do that, to take over courthouse security.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I don't think it was handled right. The county judge really, they lost. They
Mm-hmm.
lost in court. They should have known better that you cannot do that. That he did have the constitutional right to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that set a lot of bad blood off, and that's where it started. And even though the administration tries to sugarcoat it a little bit, the move to eliminate the slots that they did from the sheriff's office was, I believe, it was a political move, to hurt the sheriff.
Mm-hmm.
And regardless of what you think of the sheriff, regardless whether you think he's doing a good job, that's not relevant. What
Mm-hmm.
is relevant, though, is by eliminating the 55 or 60 slots, whatever it is, you're not hurting the sheriff. He's still getting his paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
You're hurting the constituency that he represents. So if you live in the rural area, instead of waiting an hour for a sheriff, you got to wait 4 or 5 hours, to get a sheriff, because he is undermanned. Now, let's talk about the overtime. The reason that he had a lot of overtime was because Commissioner's Court froze 72 or 75 positions in March of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got to maintain certain standards in order for him not to get written up by the jail. So of course they had overtime. Now they are losing people because of their low salaries. Yeah, that is beyond the sheriff's control, and that
Mm-hmm.
is a budgetary issue. So you've got the commissioner's court that's in charge of all budgets. Then you have the elected official that has certain constitutional duties. Uh, the sheriff could have sued, I believe, the commission and probably prevailed. Because it's been done before when an elected official has sued the county commission, for not providing the resources necessary to operate their department. And it's very rare. I would have handled it different. I would have done exactly what you did, gotten the parties together, and compromise. Look, let's see this out through the end of the fiscal year. Then you take it over, or let's go ahead and do it now. But give all these guys 30 days, 45 days to get their ducks in a row. There's always ways to do it, I think.
Now, sir, with regards to the actual positions that you mentioned, the 55 or so, it's my understanding that these 55 positions had been unfilled. Do you think that was a failure of not only the HR department at the county, but also the management at the sheriff's office for not filling these? Because, I've been a manager, and, usually it's fill it or lose it. And a lot of times I had to fill it with somebody who was
Right.
just breathing, regardless of the qualifications.
Well,
Um,
we'd have to make yeah, we'd have to make a determination. Were they unfilled because of improper management, or were they unfilled because the salaries were so far below that people could go somewhere else and do the same job for 10 or 15% more? I don't have that answer. But I think there could have been a way, instead of eliminating the slots, think about it this way: eliminating the slots, maybe eliminating 10 of the slots and taking those funds and adding them to the remaining slots to make those salaries a little bit higher. That way you wouldn't have 55 vacancies. Maybe you'd only have 40, but you'd have the ability to fill them because you're paying more to those slots.
right.
Um, So there, I mean, I think, look, there's a lot of ways to do it. I mean, I did that for 8 years as county judge and 12 years as a county commissioner. There's always ways, to work it out. I got criticized quite a bit in my early time as county judge because I would not, agree to raises for county employees.
Actually, I
But keep
wasn't
in
going to
mind,
ask you that, but I know you mentioned it in Osmo's
yeah, I mean,
podcast.
I'm not, yeah, I'm not embarrassed by it, but people need to keep in mind this is that I was the only Republican on the court. I was one vote, and how in the heck could I have manipulated four other astute county commissioners? They could have outvoted me,
Yeah,
but they chose to go along because fiscally it didn't make sense.
yeah,
And so consequently, we didn't give raises for a couple of years because the county, when I went in '07, was in a horrible financial position, and I wanted to bring it back up to where it was stronger. And once we got to that level, then we started giving some raises. But I will tell you that I did not single out elected officials and giving them 15 or 20% raises while the rank and file got a 1 or 2 or 3% raise. I think that was wrong.
yeah. Well, since you brought up the topic of salaries and raises, I did want to talk to you a little bit about the county payroll. And I did some research with regards to the county payroll. I'm going to go ahead and flip that over, and I want to talk about it a little bit. This data actually comes from openpayrolls.com. So before the trolls out there start accusing me of publishing payroll data, this data is available publicly and you can search on it yourself if you want. So there's nothing here that's a secret. Now, for privacy, I have blacked out the individual names, but I want to talk about this a little bit. And this is 2020 data. So I don't know if anything has changed. I don't believe it has for the most part. But one of the astonishing things, sir, and I hope that it's something that any administration in the future looks at, is whether there's layers of fact with regards to payroll at the county. One of the most astonishing pieces of data that I came up with, and this is the top 100 salaries at the county. And the one that just really shocked me was an individual making $466,000, and their job title is extra help. My question to you is, what is extra help, and why are they getting paid $466,000?
Okay. Well, obviously, whomever put that budget together made a mistake. Okay. Yeah. And see, and here's the thing. I mean, I know that I know that people always refer to me, Carlos, you're nothing but a numbers guy. Exactly. I'm a numbers guy, and I'm very proud of that. All you see is numbers. Absolutely. Because numbers is what makes the world go round. You cannot do anything without numbers, right?
Yeah.
I believe that 400 and some odd $1,000 is for, I believe that's probably the general fund. And that is probably extra help throughout all the departments that totals 466,000. There's not one employee that's making 466,000. Okay. That extra help normally is a line item that every department has, whether it's county clerk, district clerk, the JPs, etc. It's for part-time people that they have to bring in. Okay, so that's not one individual that's making that kind of money. Now, if it is, I'm gonna apply.
Well, yeah, we all do, right? It just caught my attention, and unfortunately,
I'd seen that before. But what it goes to is that people aren't paying attention to the finances. Yeah, that's a good example. They're not paying attention to the finances.
Yeah, because unfortunately, there's somebody's name tied to that ranking, and so I think I'm going to go ask for a loan.
Well, look, that information is public information. Salaries of public officials is public information. So you're not divulging a social security number. Right. It's not inappropriate to divulge the name.
No,
You know,
well, that's not my
no,
style,
I mean,
sir.
and I'm not asking you to.
You
What
know,
I'm suggesting to you though is I seriously doubt that that is one person in there. No, nobody in the county that I know of makes over $300,000.
yeah. Because here's the other position. They talk about a forensic pathologist, 404. I
Okay,
know.
that is a yeah, that forensic pathologist is not a county employee per se, if I remember
Uh-huh.
right. That is a contract that they had with a forensic pathologist. Now that's what they budgeted.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what they budgeted. So that doesn't mean that pathologist is going to get paid that. That's how much money is in that slot to pay that. I mean, if you don't have any, any deaths, you're not going to pay anything. But if you've got 1,000 deaths and you got to do an autopsy, then it could rise to that. Yes,
Well, I was telling somebody earlier today, because I said, well, I'm going to ask Mr. Cascos what these absorbent salaries are. They may have not, they probably weren't there when he was there. But anyway, that job is one job that you and I probably would not want to do no matter
that's
what the
right.
money was. But, then of course we get to the the judges at the court level and so forth. Now, I was a little surprised about a poll worker here. Like I said, I can't verify the validity of this, but
Okay, those are those that's money set aside for poll. What they left out was the S. It should be poll workers,
yeah,
not poll worker.
okay,
I mean, really, this demonstrates the lack of attention that people are giving to our financial statements. I mean, look, any person looking, oh my God, no,
yeah,
it's a misprint. What can I tell you? Now,
yeah,
the judges on the county court of laws and all that, I can't really read it.
155 between
That's
155, yeah,
that's probably right.
yeah,
That's probably right.
yeah.
Yeah,
Now now surprisingly, sir, well, the sheriff's about 108, and this is of course was the previous
that's
sheriff.
about right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then you've got more judges, you've got a fire marshal over there, a court
right.
reporter. Man, I wish I would have gone to school for a court reporter, you know.
Yeah,
Uh, but surprisingly, and I'm not defending, anybody that's in the position now or in the future,
yeah.
the
That's all
county
right.
judge was at $72,000. He was like number 94 on this list.
Right,
So there's actually people making more money than even the
right.
commission themselves.
Yeah, but you got to keep in mind that in most counties, the county judge and commissioners,
Uh-huh.
those are those are not full time jobs. If people say we want to work full time, they're not full time jobs. But my opponent obviously, after what's come out lately, it was that salary plus his law practice. One of the commissioners is a pharmacist. Another commissioner is an attorney. And they still have their practice. And so when I was there, I spent a lot of time, but I had my CPA practice, but I also had a big staff, that I
Right.
didn't have to spend that much time at my practice. So yeah, with those, I think County Commissioner Precinct 1, Sophie, she's probably the only one that doesn't have outside employment.
Yeah.
That is her job. Okay.
Yeah.
But everybody else has got outside employment. So they, and again, this is my argument. Everybody thinks they're worth more than what they're worth. Okay.
Yeah, I
No
think
matter
we
who
all
it
do.
is. Yeah. Everybody does.
Yeah.
But look, Daniel, when you run for a public office like this, okay, there's a couple of things that it's important to know. Number one, what are the duties and responsibilities of that job? Can I do the job? And then one toward the end is what that job pays.
Yeah.
We know what it is.
Yeah.
So to me, it's disingenuous when somebody gets elected and all of a sudden they're advocating, a 20% raise for themselves. Why? The
Yeah.
duties didn't change, responsibilities didn't change. They're not working longer hours. They're not doing anything extra that they were doing the year before. And that's what I have an issue with. I mean, if you don't like the pay, go do something else.
Yeah.
But why should you get compensated? Now, if you're going to do this full time, then, and you're going to close your practice or give up your license to CPA or an attorney, and this is all you're going to do, and you're going to be there from 7:30 to 5:30 every single day, then it does warrant more.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you that none of these members of the commission, with the exception of maybe Sophie, is at the courthouse every day, 8 to 5.
Yeah.
I can tell you. I mean, I'd get to the court. When I was secretary, I'd get to the Capitol at 7:30 in the morning. When I was county judge, I'd get there at 7:30 in the morning. Today, I get to my CPA practice at 7:30 in the morning.
Wow.
And I leave whenever my work is done. Okay. Yeah. And so to me, I just think it's somewhat disingenuous to ask for a raise when you know what it pays.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, I told this to two people that are no longer with the county, but they held their positions for quite a while. They'd always come and they want more money. And I finally got upset, not in a bad way. I said, look, if you can go and find a job in the private sector that's going to pay you this kind of money, guaranteed job for 4 years with all the perks and the benefits and the cell phone and the cars, come and go as you please. If you can find that job, go do it.
They're not going to find
it. Go do it. You're not. And so to me, it's just not. I mean, I don't have a problem giving everybody. When I was there, I didn't like percentage raises. Yeah. Okay, I didn't do well because somebody making 100,000, 3% to them is $3,000.
Yeah.
In the lower rank and file, if they're making 20,000, if you're out in the fields up there, that's $600.
Yeah.
So what I did was let's say, how much can we distribute and give everybody $1,000 across the board.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how much you were making.
Yeah.
A gallon of milk costs the same to somebody making $100,000 to somebody making $25,000. Yeah. Same thing. So I did that. And I never awarded myself, 5,000, 10,000, 15,000. I don't even remember even asking or receiving a raise.
Yeah.
And I just that's just me. And I just think they're going to compare, well, other clerks and other judges and other counties get this. Well, that's fine. You don't know what their tax base is. You don't know what their finances are. You don't have any idea what that situation is. No idea what it is. They could be a wealthier county. I know commissioners that make 75,000 in very, very little counties, but they're very wealthy counties. They're all oil and gas.
Right.
And so we have to live within our means. And before elected officials get raises of that magnitude, 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, I think you give it to the rank and file. Yeah. It's that simple in my mind.
And I mean, I know that you're not, an HR expert, and neither am I. And just even though I didn't want to go back and talk about the sheriff, but that's one of his arguments I remember in the news conference that he had, that tit for tat news conference that both sides had a few weeks ago, which was kind of funny. But, he goes, I think he mentions that, well, we can't pay him like they do in Hidalgo County. But, I did some research over the jailer because I know he honed in on the jailers. But, there's an average market value for that position. And it wasn't very different from what this list showed. So where do you come up with the extra money to pay these guys? But then what do you do to retain them? I mean, it's very difficult in general to retain employees now.
Well, I think that the way the commission approached and the county judge approached him, he says, you tell me how we're going to pay for this.
Yeah.
Well, that's not the sheriff's role.
Yeah.
To tell you how we're going to pay, because he's got no control over revenues coming in.
Yeah.
But also during the discussions of the budget, I think what the commission or the judge said something like, well, the JPs, many of them had shortfalls in their collections. The revenue wasn't coming in, right? Yeah. I remember hearing that and reading that. Well, no slots were cut from their offices.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Why just pick on the sheriff?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that there was blame on both sides. I think that the leadership could have handled it different. I think the sheriff could have handled it different. But at the end of the day, who ends up getting hurt by this are the people that live in our rural communities that rely on the sheriffs for public safety and the jailers. That's who
Now,
got hurt with all of this.
now, what's your position? And I didn't want to talk about the sheriff tonight, but anyway, uh,
It's all right.
what about the position of not accepting those federal inmates? Because it's my understanding that that was money. So,
Yeah, yeah. I don't know, and I guess I mean I can tell you what it is. When I was there, Lucia was on the verge of losing federal inmates,
yeah,
and we were able to negotiate. It was costing us more to house a federal inmate than what they were paying us. I forgot what it was. I think it was costing $40 a day to house them, and they were paying us $37 a day or something. I forget what it was.
yeah,
So we were able to negotiate a new contract with the feds at the time that gave us more money, enough to cover our costs and overhead. And keep in mind that we're not there to make profit.
yeah,
Okay, government is not a profit maker.
yeah.
Okay, it's a public service, and it's good to make a lot of money, right? But you got to provide the service. So I'm really not sure what happened. I think what happened, and I'm not privy to anything, but it appears that the federal inmates that were coming in were costing us more than what we were incurring in the expense side, I think. But I
Okay.
don't know. I really haven't gotten into the weeds with that.
So,
But I will tell you, if I get back in, we will get the federal inmates back.
well, I guess that's the thing, because the administration currently says, well, that's the reason why you can't pay them because you have no money because you got rid of the federal inmates. I mean, I don't know how much of a chunk that was, but I
You
mean, is
know,
there truth to
I don't
that?
know. And again, we keep in mind, Daniel, that we're dealing with piecemeal information coming from prejudicial sources. Okay, one side's going to tell you one thing, other side's going to tell you something else. It's a
Yeah.
catch-22. What came first, right? The chicken or the egg? At the end of at the end of the day, what ends up happening is that Cameron County as a whole, was damaged by all of this controversy going back and forth. We never had that when I was there. We didn't have these kinds of fights and internal this. I mean, if we did, we did it behind closed doors and not aired in public.
Yeah.
Nobody can say any one time that any elected official had a press conference to complain about commissioner's court.
Yeah,
Never happened.
I agree with you.
Never
And that
happened.
and that kind of leads me to, I guess, an opportunity to pivot towards the general election, obviously, is to give you an opportunity to kind of express, you know, how you will bring change to the county versus, what we have now. Uh, you know, obviously, I've never seen this kind of communication breakdown in my lifetime,
No,
but obviously we got to start
it hasn't
there,
happened.
you know.
Well, it's. I'm not going to speculate as to, well. I can tell you what Eddie has done that I would not have done.
Yeah,
Okay, let's start with that. I think the pandemic, it was all new to a lot of us, but it was mishandled.
yeah.
We had people waiting in line for 6 to 7 or 8 hours to get vouchers, only to return back to get the vaccine. If that was the case, fine. But the least we could have done was set up portable bathrooms, water stations, or something from folks that were there for 6 to 7 hours. Some people were getting there at 2 o'clock in the morning to be ready at 9 when they opened. It made no sense to me. I know people for a fact that were driving to Edinburgh and Laredo and went and came back done
I
with
did.
that. So yeah, well, there you go. I mean, just say so. What I'm saying is not bull. It's the truth.
Yeah,
That was mishandled. I think the lack of information coming forward quickly was a bad idea. Having press conferences every single day to tell people really uneventful information was, to me, just photo ops. Okay, the arena was a bad idea. It was unaffordable and unsustainable. Thank God that it failed. Okay, you're looking at the financials that you just presented with extra help, 400 grand plus this 400,000. Those are obviously errors,
mm-hmm.
but why didn't anybody catch them?
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing too, when commissioners award themselves 750 vouchers to indiscriminately pass out, to whomever it was, that was wrong. You know, give it to the clinics, give it to the health, give it to the health providers. But what gives you the right to go to 4 or 5 churches and give them, you know, a couple of hundred vouchers with no control? You're eliminating a whole bunch of churches in your district.
Mm-hmm.
Fining people for wearing masks, and you know, for not wearing a mask covering in their car was ridiculous. Monitoring and you know, kind of like restricting meets of 10 people. You couldn't gather in your own home more than 10 people. Yet you had one commissioner that held a wedding for 250 people and no one said a word. Got away with it. You know, I mean, that to me, it's just the unfairness of it. You know, awarding raises to yourselves, and you know, from 18 to 22% in these times. Well, no time is good, right?
Right.
But especially when we have these things going on, and you're proposing, you know, these exorbitant raises is just ridiculous. I mean, you know, those are the things that I would not do. I think that what I would do, number one, be at the courthouse the way you're supposed to be every single day. Yeah. Return calls, return text messages, return messages, be accessible. You know, if you get asked to go speak to a group of people in a rural community because they got flooded out, you don't ask them, you know, if they're there to BITCH. You know, you don't throw that out at them. You know, are you there to BITCH, or do you want help? They lose their cool. You know, people are there for assistance and help, not to be chastised for being there. That was wrong. You know, I think business closures was a mistake. I think curfews were, you know, I like the curfew because my neighborhood's really, really quiet, but it made no sense to shut down at 11 o'clock. Yeah. You know, and then, you know, shutting down the businesses, you know, essential businesses were okay. Well, every business is essential, especially to the employees that work there. Yeah. So who am I to determine whether a pan dulce place is non-essential, or a nail salon or a hair? You know, that shouldn't have been my call to determine and identify. Well, the state did that. I would have gone against the governor if he would have come up with stuff like that, you know, and I would not have done that. So there's a lot of things that Eddie has done that just either don't make sense or weren't fiscally sound, and we're seeing it now. The question about the arena, you know, I think that there should be more input, you know, from communities. When I first got on, I wanted to do a countywide convention / arena. Yeah, I remember that. Okay, but I wanted every single community to participate, everyone. Yeah. And I wanted everybody to have a piece of the pie. So everybody had skin in the game, okay? Yeah. Because no city or county can handle this. If we're all going to lose money, let's all lose a little bit of money. But you got to have some skin in the game, right? Yeah. And so the two communities that did not want to buy into it were South Padre Island and Harlingen. Obviously. They didn't want to buy into it. Everybody else did. So my deal was it's either all or none. So when we had those two committees that balked, I said, then it's off the table.
Mr. Cascos, you made me lose an opportunity to see Chiquita.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, right.
But you know, one thing. I didn't want to talk about the arena, but let's chime in a little bit about that, because as I told you, I went by down to the island, and I thought about the arena that was proposed and so forth, and I remembered the conventions that I attended at South Padre. Is it viable? And I'm not a construction guy, so I wouldn't know. I'm not an environmental guy, so I don't know how sound it is to build upon what's already there at the island. Add more to it. Instead of building something new.
Yeah, we have to determine, first of all, that number one, do we have the land available to do something like that? Yeah. I believe that we do, based on what I recall. We also have to address traffic. Yeah, that's going to be a problem. So I'm hoping, as I prefaced earlier, that would give us the incentive, to pursue the causeway a little bit more seriously. But look, at the end of the day, if it's a great deal, then you have entrepreneurs do it.
Yeah.
You have developed, just like they're doing in San Benito. San Benito is building, something similar, not really an arena type, more of a convention, a small convention, but they've got private monies doing that. Their exposure is zero.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think it's about a 30 or $40 million project.
Yeah.
But again, if it's a big money maker, we're going to do this and do that, then you go out and get entrepreneurs to do this.
Yeah.
That's what I would not risk.
Yeah.
I'm a numbers guy. Remember, I'm a numbers guy. I would not risk taxpayer money
Yeah.
for something because I want my name on a plaque.
Yeah. Well,
That's not the way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about the arena, it definitely was controversial, but then, both times and both votes, I mean, those votes were fairly close. I mean, it seems like 50% wants it, 50% does it. I mean, I understand each side's position, and so that's why I was asking the question, can we build upon what's already there at the island? Because obviously the island is the attraction. At the end of the
Right.
day, there is no city that anyone from up north is going to come down here
Right.
for except the island. That's just
We have
reality.
there's a lot now. There's a lot of land available just north. Okay, that's readily available. That's for sale.
Yeah.
I haven't looked into it, but look, I think the island is the attraction,
Yeah.
and more people may be willing to come down for a couple of days if they're going to be at the island. Then that would work. But we're building it where they were going to build it. There's nothing there. There's
Yeah.
nothing around it. And if you want, well, I know for a fact that a hotel entrepreneur was approached, and he said, "No, I'm not going to make any money out here."
Yeah.
So I think getting a large hotel chain to buy into it, even though that was the word, we have. So you know what? They were talking about having already signed contracts with people, and I just said, "Well, you know what? Show me the contract."
Yeah.
They said they had a signed agreement with a basketball farm team or something, whatever. Show me the contract.
Yeah.
They never provided any supporting documentation for the incentives that they were saying we had. Well, we're going to have all these suites. Show me where people have bought into it. They said, well, we build it, so and so is going to do this. Show me a commitment letter.
Mm-hmm.
Show me, that's all it takes. They're not difficult. We will do this if you do this. Show me a commitment letter. Nothing was ever provided to anyone.
Well, I believe that in the case of the Harlingen Convention Center, they literally had to bribe Hilton to build that hotel right next door, because I don't think they would have done it without.
And they're losing money, and
Yeah.
they're not making any money.
Yeah.
And maybe in time, but how much time do we really want? How much time do we want to invest?
Yeah.
And to me, the failure to even acknowledge that there was a potential. And one of the statements that Eddie did say, he says, "Well, if it doesn't work, then we may have to go to the taxpayer." Fine, and that is a true statement.
Yeah.
But are we willing to risk tax money on something like this? And I said, no, I don't want to do that.
Let me ask you, because you're a numbers guy, do you think there's been a tendency to go to the hot tax cookie jar too much lately with regards to venues? I've even believed that here in Brownsville, we've tapped the hot tax to build a Hilton here on Morrison. Mm-hmm. I mean, is that something that we should be doing?
That's a little bit different, because I mean that on Morrison, I mean, you've got retail all around you. Yeah. You've already got the infrastructure around you. To build it out there where they were talking about, there is nothing out there. Yeah, they've got a development going on. But let me ask you this: who in their right mind is going to want to build a home in that subdivision, knowing that they've got to fight traffic once a month? It's going to take them an hour and a half to get to their home, mm-hmm. because there's a concert going on and you've got 2,000 cars in line trying to get in. Mm-hmm. Okay, think of it that way. So is it viable? I think the island, I know the traffic, the congestion, but no matter where you build this thing, you're going to have traffic congestion. So the answer, if we're going to do it on the island, then that second causeway has to be a top priority.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, the way the politics is, whether we like it or not, we have to keep in mind who the leadership is, where the leadership is, and what party they belong to, and who do we have down here that can really, do a rah 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 for us up there. They're going to spend their money where they believe that they can get the best bang for their buck.
Do
So
you?
again, at the end,
Yeah,
go
go ahead.
ahead.
Sorry. No, go ahead. Finish your statement. I'm
Look,
sorry.
at the end of the day, if it's a great deal, then we should try to encourage private development.
Okay.
Maybe do a private, a public-private partnership, but where we don't risk anything. I don't want to risk anything because it's not my money to risk.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the deal. It's your money, you risk it. But
Mm-hmm.
this is not our money. This is taxpayer money. And that's where I did not want to go with this.
Do you envision us getting a second causeway anytime
Yeah.
soon? 5 years,
Yeah.
10 years?
Well, it's already been 10 or 15 years.
That's what I'm saying.
I keep hearing it. I think there's a way. I think there's a way to do it. When we had the merging of the NPOs, we were hoping that would help, and I think it will help. But you know what? You got to have the right people at the helm.
Yeah.
When I got to be county judge, they'd been working on the West Rail project for 10 or 15 years,
Yeah.
and it wasn't moving. I became county judge and started pushing the right buttons, and we got it built.
Yeah.
When I was there, the I-69 was kind of like, yeah, okay, fine, whatever. Well, we continue to expand it. If you ever drive by Driscoll in that area, there's a couple of overpasses that are going up that got started. So, I think that you got to have a couple of things. One, you have the planets aligned, and you have to have the right people at the helm that know the right people at the helm. You got to know the decision makers, the people at the head. So, as I was SOS, I had the opportunity to meet a lot of these movers and shakers at the state level that I still stay in contact with every now and then.
Yeah.
Governor Abbott's going to be here on Thursday for a local party fundraiser. I'll be introducing him again. And so, contrary to what people think about, oh, you had a falling out with Abbott, he fired you, this and that, I don't know what else to say. I can tell you that the average lifespan of an SOS in Texas is about 16 months.
Yeah.
I served for 24 months. Abbott and I have a very good relationship. He just endorsed me 2 days ago.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So if we were on the outs, trust me, he would not be endorsing me, and he wouldn't come down as often as he does and have me introduce him everywhere. Whenever there's a political event, I'm always the one that introduces him.
Yeah.
So we need to set that rumor aside. Being SOS was great, but it wears on you.
Yeah.
It wore on me. I mean, I visited 142 cities in 2 years.
Wow.
And gave 200 speeches, Mexico 5 times. Canada once, and so I was always on the road, and then I was trying to maintain 2 households, and then trying to keep my CPA practice going. It was rough. It was rough. So it was rough, but I learned a lot, and I got to meet a lot of good people that I still have, some pretty good relationships with. So just take it from there.
Well, I'd like to give you an opportunity for some closing statements. We've gone about an hour and a half, believe it or not. So
well, I think I've been doing my closing statements as we go along. Another border bridge. Yeah, I mean, we can always use more bridges, but the problem with building more bridges is that you've got to have the infrastructure on both sides, to get the traffic from that bridge out. You're out into the metropolitan area. The same thing with Mexico. They got to have the infrastructure, going into Monterrey or Ciudad Victoria or Mexico City or wherever. You got to build those highways. So the bridge building is easy. It's developing that highway infrastructure to get you out, and then of course working with GSA. I just want to have another opportunity to serve this community as county judge. I think I did a good job for 8 years, and I know I'm a numbers guy, but I did, I think I did a pretty good job as 8 years as county judge and 12 years as county commissioner. You really have to have the character and the temperament, to be a county judge or a mayor or any anything in a leadership position.
Yeah.
And I think I've got that temperament. I think I've got the maturity, and I do it because I want to do it. I don't have to be doing this, but I decided to do it because I didn't want him to run unopposed in a primary, which he did, and in a general, which he almost did. I think Eddie's a nice guy. I mean, I've known him
Yeah.
since he was a young kid. But I just don't believe that he's got other things to do, obviously, making money in other arenas, no pun intended. But I think he's got that, and I don't think he focuses uh, being county judge as much as this county deserves.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
Well, definitely, sir. I appreciate the time that you took to meet with me. I apologize if I asked too many questions this time around and threw too many pictures and diagrams, but I think it's important, I applaud everybody that runs for public offices and serves in public office. I mean, just like you, sitting behind a mic and a camera on a weekly basis is not an easy thing to do, you know.
Well,
And,
you gotta look, Daniel. You've got. I think when you called me about doing it, I think I responded right away, and I
yeah,
think part of being a leader is to respond right away to people.
yeah,
I mean, if it's important enough for you to call me or text me, it's important enough for me to respond
yeah,
quickly.
yeah,
I think people deserve that, regardless of where you stand in life.
right,
And that I've always been like that. I will always be like that. Accessibility to me is a big deal.
yeah,
And when I was secretary, I mean, I would return my own calls, and people were shocked. I mean,
yeah,
really, you're calling me back? Yeah.
yeah,
I look at it this way: we all put our clothes on the same way,
right,
and we're all equal in a lot of respects. And I want to continue serving this community that I love, and just ask people to consider voting for me if they can come to it. It's not about a Republican or a Democrat. It's about putting the community first, and that's what it's always been about for me.
yeah. Well, definitely, sir. I know you've always been accessible. You've always returned my calls and, well, my texts primarily, So I really do appreciate you coming on. You're always invited and always welcome. And I think you've always been, graciously treated. And you're always welcome all the time. And I definitely wish you the best of luck in the next month or so. And after that, if you are, elected, you're always welcome to come on whenever you
I
want.
appreciate it. I
Alrighty,
appreciate
sir.
it, and in case no one's asked you, I'd
Uh,
appreciate your vote.
all right. All right, sir. Well,
All right. Well, thank you
have a
so
good
much,
night,
Daniel. Have a good evening.
and we'll be talking down the road.
You let me know. It's good to
Alrighty.
see you again. Okay. Take
Alrighty.
care.